So good evening once again. BCCI has a new man at the helm. One of India's favourite cricketers, the Dada of 90s, Sourav Ganguly, will soon officially be taking his charge. And his first big task may simply involve deciding MS Dhoni's future. Dhoni hasn't played for India since the World Cup tournament ended, which was 3 months ago. Since then, we've played West Indies and South Africa without Mahi. So obviously, it's led to a series of speculation on whether or not Dhoni will return, come back to the team. Should he come back to the team? Should he simply retire? All of those debates have constantly happened. And Sourav Ganguly was asked about it today. And this is what we know he said. We will have to see what Dhoni wants. I will also speak to him, what he wants to do and what he does not want to do. Since I was not in the picture, it may be a case that it's not clear with me as of now. We'll be in a position to find out and then decide on the way forward. So in a sense, what Sourav Ganguly seems to be suggesting is that he will speak to MS Dhoni. We all know that he's set to meet the selectors on the 24th. There has to be a decision on India's upcoming series with Bangladesh, and the selectors are due to pick India's squad for that series on October 24th. So there's very little time. Will Dhoni return for that or not is the big question. Will Dhoni return at all to the Indian national team in any of the big three formats? Or should he simply announce his retirement? A very sensitive topic and a touchy topic for a lot of people. There's a huge amount of passion when it comes to MS Dhoni in this country and even across the world, actually, when it comes to cricket followers. But I'm going to do the tough task of trying to moderate this panel as I go around asking our experts this question. So let's say good evening to Alan Sippy, former cricketer, with me in our studios, along with Vinit Tiwari, our managing editor. I also have Charu Sharma, sports commentator, Mr. Bharat Sundaresan, author of The Dhoni Touch, and Kishore Bhimani, senior sports journalist. Let's start with those who are with me in the studios. And Alan, I'm going to start with you on this one. Will Dhoni come back?
Firstly, Tanvi, we're talking about a cricketer who's a legend. So emotions are naturally going to be running higher because you have not only India loving this man, the entire world, the cricketing world loves this guy. So the heart will always rule the head in this matter. But if you look at MS Dhoni, now what he's done in the past is everybody knows about it. What he's doing right now, I just feel that unfortunately, because he's taking a little bit longer to decide the future, it's creating a little bit of a buzz, it's creating a little bit of a negativity with people. But I honestly believe that this man should not retire. That's my opinion. And I feel that this man still has something to offer in the limited format.
Now or ever, Alan? Because there may be some who believe as long he's there, he shouldn't retire.
I don't want him to retire, Tanvi. And I just want to make one point why I don't want him to retire. Because like a cricketer of the past, like Sachin Tendulkar and, the great Kapil Dev,
right,
you want this man to retire on his own terms. Right now, it may be the time for him to retire, but I want him to decide. It would be unfortunate, and I don't think it could happen. It would be unfortunate if Mr. Ganguly has to decide his future or the selectors have to decide his future, because this man is a legend of the country and he needs that, the perfect farewell for himself.
Okay, let me go across to, in fact, Mr. Bharat Sundaresan and ask him that question. Bharat, do you believe so? That let him decide and take this call on his own terms? Should we not factor in what's best for Indian cricket and the cricketing team?
I think it looks like he's taking the call anyway. Because if you look at it, it looks like he's on some notice period. Like, he's not retired, but he's not showing up for work either. So it's a strange dilemma that, Dhoni always leaves Indian cricket in. Nobody knows what's going on in his head. And as I see it, it's anyway been left up to him. Like, I don't think this would happen in the case of any other cricketer where he just, at the age of 38, he just decides to go on a sabbatical and people just let him take the sabbatical. That just tells you his standing in Indian cricket, but also about how he's been allowed to take his own course.
He's been allowed to take his own course all this while. But Mr. Kishore Bhimani, there is a change in what is happening in the BCCI, the BCCI management, and COA will be out very soon. Sourav Ganguly will be heading it. A lot of other changes that we know will take place. Do you think in such a scenario, MS Dhoni will return, or is that now a very, very bleak possibility?
You see, left to MS Dhoni, what he does is something quite different. I have a very firm opinion that he should not only retire now, he should have retired a while ago. It's not a question of why. It's a question, as Sunil Gavaskar famously said, why not? Why aren't you leaving? When people ask you that, I think that's too much. Today, he has been a fantastic servant of Indian cricket, a superstar. And he is ruining that superstar status by hanging on. I mean, today the point is, if a managing director says, I want to be managing director of a company, public enterprise or private enterprise, up to 75 or 80, my brain is doing perfectly well, thank you. I'm sorry. These things are decided by outsiders. It's an outsider who takes a claim. It's you who take a claim whether I'm a good panel discussion person. Otherwise, you don't call me. This is very straightforward. Today, there are two candidates. Two very interesting candidates for Indian wicketkeeper. Ridhiman Shah, who is the best keeper in the country, and a fine batsman. Rishabh Pant, a sort of bad boy of Indian cricket, vastly talented. It's between those two at the moment. Where does Dhoni come in? Today, Ridhiman came back and played a brilliant innings. And today, he kept very well. Now the point is very simple. It is up to whether Saurav tells him or whether Anurag Thakur tells him. That's not the issue. The issue is that if he says, no, I want to hang on, in which case selectors should judge him on merit and kick him out. I mean, there's no question of sentiments. You're representing the country. You're representing 130 crore people. You are an international hero. You've got everything out of this world on your cricket. Now, why are we being sentimental about it? If he has done his service, fine. If he's worth 16 crores a year, you pay him 16 crores for IPL.
Correct.
But today, don't stand on ceremony. No, he cannot go, poor fellow, like Tendulkar couldn't go.
Right. Okay. Actually, that's a very, very interesting point that you've raised. And Vinay, I'm going to come to you on that one because, so there are two aspects. Should he go and do people want him to go? Often we tend to mix the two.
We do. And I'll tell you, I'll give you three reasons why this is such a vexed debate. One of our panelists, Bharat Sundaresan, is actually in Australia sitting at 1 in the morning discussing Dhoni for a reason. He doesn't need to. He can actually be asleep.
Right.
The fact that he agreed tells you a lot about how important this whole discussion is. It's not a straight cut and dry answer. And I'll tell you, I have a direct answer to Mr. Bhimani on why it is not a cut and dry answer. Dhoni is the quintessential small Indian dream, the small town Indian dream. He's a man who taught two generations pretty much on how if he can do it, I can do it too. He's not a cricketer alone. He's a man, and I grew up in a small town India. And I can tell you, small town Indians grow up with a sense of envy about big town India because we always believe we can't make it to that big league.
Correct.
Dhoni not only made it to that big league, he cracked that big league, and he's been a absolute perfect role model in every sense of the word. He's taught you the virtues of how to succeed and keep your feet on the ground. He's told you how to handle pressure and with calm and composure. He's told you how to handle egos because remember the first time he became the skipper, he had a galaxy of players underneath him who were much bigger in stature and in performance. He's also taught you many other lessons of life and society per se on how to handle things. I mean, you've seen modern Indian cricketers now who are far more flamboyant having played just 2 series. And he's also a man who's taught you the balance between personal life and cricket life. I think that's the reason why when Alan started saying, with Dhoni, it's not a question of just the head, it's a question of heart as well. And the public pressure and the kind of expectations that people have from him, not just as a cricketer, but as a human being, in my opinion, surpasses that which we had even for somebody like a Sachin or Kapil, because these are the two examples where...
You're starting a whole new debate here.
I'm starting a new debate because these two players, I believe, were debated upon when they should hang up their boots. Kapil's case and then Sachin's case.
Correct. Okay, so is public pressure one of the key reasons that MS Dhoni hasn't officially been told that this is it, or he hasn't officially taken that decision? Charu Sharma, good evening to you. The big question we're asking is, will MS Dhoni return? Now, if he's chosen to not be part of the team and not play 2 big series that we've had since the World Cup, you know, should he be given that liberty? Shouldn't somebody at the BCCI be taking this decision, minus the emotions that Vinay was just talking about?
Well, we can't escape the fact that we are essentially a sentimental nation. And of course, that's been born in many cases in the past. But, I was very impressed with Dhoni when he suddenly hung up his test match boots a couple of years ago in Australia in the middle of a series. So it just goes on to prove that he has that maverick streak and is not excessively concerned about the sentimentality of how long he should play. After that, though, I think there have been some pressures in his life and he's carried on. Of course, limited overs cricket generally takes a little less out of you, and T20 theoretically takes even less, of course, very intense. And he has carried those formats on. I don't think, the little I know of MSD, that he's going to be swayed by public opinion or even by a very important angle, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this later, the commercial pressures that come from sponsors and others saying, well, we need you in the team because the longer you're in the team, the more visible you are, the more visible we are. So having said that, I don't think Dhoni is going to succumb to those pressures. I really don't know what he's waiting for, because in T20 cricket, which is the least in terms of time at least, if not intensity, he could carry on. But I'm sure somewhere in his mind, he will know, and he's already, of course, proved that in Test match cricket, that if I leave, I'm going to be creating spaces for others who deserve to be in the Indian cricket team. What more does MSD want from Indian cricket? Frankly, to my mind, nothing, because he's gotten an enormous fortune. He's got enormous following. He's such a wonderful person. Does Indian cricket need him still? Is the only question. And only the selectors are really, they can answer that, because, for us to keep saying, and I keep thinking when I hear about these debates or such chatter on television or elsewhere, we are trying to decide whether he should play or not. Even the player trying to decide whether he should play or not. Hang on, there's something called selectors. It is their job. So the player can only say, I can offer my services, but he can't say, I will play till I want to play, because no, hang on, you will play till the selectors allow you to play.
Correct, but a lot of our panelists who just spoke right now alluded to the fact that frankly it's his decision, and then he gets to decide, and we should give him that respect for what he's done and delivered for our country. So what if there's a situation, Alan, tomorrow that Dhoni decides he wants to come back, and it's up to the selectors? Should they make that decision, in your view?
I'm fully with Charu on this one, because he's absolutely right what he's saying. But I think when he talks about the selectors, does this selection panel have the guts? Does this selection panel have the guts to actually drop Dhoni? I don't think so. Personally speaking, I don't really think so. They might want to, but they'll sit on the fence, because this is how it is. But now, with Sourav Ganguly coming in there, I think that's a big different ball game, because now you've got a powerful guy with a voice, a powerful guy with substance, Sourav Ganguly. So now it could be that the selectors are told by Sourav Ganguly that you might have to, if he's not retiring, you might have to drop him. But without Sourav Ganguly, I don't think this selection committee had the wherewithal, the guts to drop this man. Because to drop this guy, you're not only going against, the entire nation, you're making a bold statement that this man is finished. Because if in his eyes, if Dhoni feels that he still has something to offer, you're basically telling him, you're finished, you're not good enough, which is it's a big debate. It's not that easy to tell Dhoni that, because I think in T20 cricket, Dhoni has something left in him. In IPL, I feel Dhoni is 100% going to play the IPL, and I think he's going to do very well, because if he does very well, what happens then? Have we got the guts to drop him? So it's a big decision for the selectors.
I will take that question across to Mr. Kishore Bhimani, because Mr. Bhimani in his first comment spoke about the two youngsters who've played very well, who've shown that they can come into the Indian cricket team and replace Dhoni. But that's as far as him as a wicketkeeper is concerned, Mr. Bhimani. What about Dhoni the batsman? What about Dhoni the strategist? What about Dhoni, who often plays like a pseudo captain even when Virat Kohli is there?
The finisher is the term, the finisher.
Well, let me make a couple of points, Tanvi.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Bhimani,
okay,
go
can
ahead,
I speak
please.
now?
Yes.
Yeah. The very fact is, we heard a small lecture about his other, how he is a motivational person, how he is loved by the small villages and so on and so forth. I think that's totally irrelevant. Today, the fact that if he is a great motivational person, let him go and give lectures and earn 20-25 lakhs a time, which is what people do. We are thinking of him as a product on the cricket field, in between the 22 yards. We are not interested in what are the other things he can give. He can allow movies to be made. He can give motivational lectures and all that. I'm sorry. And the two other people we mentioned, that is Rishabh Pant As a batsman, please, I may be in a minority and the experts might ridicule me, but if Rishabh Pant gets going, I mean, he's got the talent to today contribute much more than Dhoni can. Don't tell me Dhoni is the greatest batsman in the world. He's not. Today, Ridhiman Shah, in spite of being repeatedly ignored, repeatedly put aside, has come back and played a great match because he's got the chance. Now, the simple fact that, oh, but is he ready to retire? Is that really correct? Is that really logical? Is he ready to call it a day? And one more point, Tanveer. Why are we saying that Saurav Ganguly will be able to convince him for whichever side it goes? I'm sorry. A president, it is not the president of the board who selects the person. Today we had a history of Indian cricket which is blighted by the fact that Narayan Swamy Srinivasan, the then president of the board, which Mahendra Amarnath talked about, walked into the selectors. Mahendra was there, Raja Venkat was there. These selectors were there. And he said, you can choose what you like, but you can't change Dhoni. Now, this is on record. So what it means is, Saurav Ganguly says, please take him in the team. You cannot turn around and say, no, we will drop him. The selectors have the last word. I mean, let us follow the traditions of cricket.
Do the selectors have the last word when it comes to certain personalities who become so big, Vinay?
Look, I mean, I agree with Alan on when he's the cricketer on the panel, and I think I agree with him. This panel doesn't really have the stature to actually tell Dhoni that you're no longer required. Having said that, look, unfortunately, I'm not as cut and dry as Mr. Bhimani is, and I don't think the rest of India is as cut and dry as he is. We are living in a country where emotions and sentiments decide a lot of things, including government policies. And Dhoni is a much bigger and a larger subject, so to speak. Now, like it or not, that will play a role. I'm taking the example of Kapil and Sachin because in both those cases, this became a big debate. Kapil, for instance, in the last 2 years, was often accused of having dragged on and on because he wanted to beat Richard Hadley's record. Another matter that 5 years later or 10 years later, Richard Hadley's record got broken, or Kapil's record got broken by people who were perhaps 8 years or 9 years younger than what Kapil was. Cricket evolves and it moves along with times. I think it does make a big difference on the kind of persona an individual is. Remember, the current generation of cricketers are also being judged by how well or badly they do, say, in IPL, which was not there earlier. And his fanatical following and his performance in the IPL, the fact that he's made the most successful franchisee out of sometimes bits and pieces players, the level of mentoring that he's been able to do, some of the surround sound that has happened, the visuals that you're running on screen is part of that surround sound in many ways, has created Dhoni a persona which I still believe, and again, a lot of people in the city that I'm sitting in will kill me for saying it, in some ways is perhaps even bigger than Sachin. Sachin was a great cricketer, probably one of the greatest we've ever had, but I think Dhoni was more than just a cricketer. And that's where he has a very different way in terms of how people judge him, and which is why we are having this discussion.
I do agree with you to a certain extent, but I also believe that this emotion that you're talking about and the public sentiment, the public pressure, I think that's also changing a little bit. And maybe I want to open up the phone lines right now and ask some of our viewers to call us, especially the ones who are Dhoni fans, and tell us if they will be okay with the fact and if they believe that despite how much they have loved and appreciated Dhoni's cricket, they believe that this is time for him to really retire, or this is time for the selectors to say, no, it doesn't matter how awesome you were. Today we need to decide on the basis of what's there and what's the best for the team. So I'm going to go across to our viewers in just a bit, but Bharat, let me come to you on that. Irrespective of what he has done for cricket and and the personality that he is, fact of the matter is nobody should be allowed to choose whether or not you play at a certain point for the team. You cannot simply turn around and say, I'm going to take a 2-month sabbatical or a 3-month sabbatical, go and serve, in my regiment, and maybe play the next series, maybe not play the next series. Is that the right kind of an example to set?
Well, but that example was set a long time ago, Tanvi. That's how Indian cricket works. That's how India works. Like, nobody likes to retire in India for some reason. And the way that Indian cricket is, like people spoke about Kapil Dev and Tendulkar, and selection panels did not want it to be on them. So similarly, like in this case, this selection panel's tenure is about to end. So if you think about it from their perspective, they must be thinking that, let me just run my course through so that it doesn't fall upon me, then the next selection panel can, like, it's on their head then, whatever they want to do with Dhoni. And that's how it's going to be. I mean, in Indian cricket, we've seen where a cricketer reaches a point after which he almost becomes untouchable when it comes to, whether it comes to criticism or whatever. See, and that's how it's going to be with Dhoni as well. Like, I was there at the World Cup, and he was blamed for every match that India lost, or they lost two, both games he was blamed for it. But the moment people start talking about him retiring, everybody's up in arms again, not wanting him to retire. But that's how Indian cricket is.
Okay, that's a fair enough point. But I know you say that he's not the first one to set that example. Yes.
No, I just wanted to add one thing to what Bharat just said, and because it's linked to what he said, I just wanted to add this here, right? Bharat is currently sitting in a country that has a very different approach to cricket. They are very cut and dry as a nation. Okay, they retire at the peak. All the Australian greats have retired at the time when everybody asked why has he retired. They were always at the peak, whether it was Alan Border, whether it was Jeff Marsh, they always retired at the peak. Indians, and he rightly said so, have always allowed this space for the person to choose their own career in that sense. I mean, we've been that way. We've allowed Kapil Dev to choose his retirement date. We allowed Sachin to choose his retirement date, to score his 100 hundreds. And we've had this tradition. Only Gavaskar was the only man actually in that sense who retired when he could have actually carried on for maybe another few months. But otherwise, we've had a tradition where the lens of the game have been allowed, and that's what India is. And I think Bharat was bang on.
Okay,
right.
but I know you're giving this example, but let me take that to Charu. Charu, but as far as I know, Kapil Dev never by choice skipped a test. He never by choice decided that I want to play now and I don't want to play now, or I may take a 3-month break and I may choose to come back next year when the T20 World Cup takes place. Is that fair?
Well, those were different days, Tanvi, because there was far less cricket those days than there is now. There was virtually no, well, there was certainly no T20. The series were a lot shorter, etc., etc. So, yes, there was much more test match cricket, but, so we're comparing apples and oranges. And those days, you were desperate to play. I'm saying, for heaven's sake, bring another series on. Now, of course, it's different because there's so much cricket going on. It's virtually a 365. So, it's not a fair comparison because, I mean, if the cricket was played lesser now or almost the same as it was, say, in the 90s or 80s, none of these players would have taken a break. But just getting back to this whole business of should we continue to play Dhoni or not, should we play another series or not, there's also a lot to be said about the process of communication. And I mentioned that because Saurav Ganguly was the one who was, in a sense, should we say, a hard done by, because when he was taken away from cricket, and if not Indian cricket, then IPL cricket, he was very concerned about the lack of communication. And you'll hear that as a constant theme all the way through for many, many decades now. When somebody was told, no more, thank you very much, bye-bye, the communication process seemed to be a little underdone. And in Dhoni's case, once again, I'm cutting a lot of long stories short, the process of communication by the selectors particularly, and if Ganguly wants to enter the fray as the president of the board, he's welcome to also communicate to Dhoni closely, saying, Dhoni, what would you like to do? Because as a nation, we are sentimental, fans may want you, we still think you're basically good enough, you stayed away for a while, would you like to play one more series in India? Because to my mind, that is a brilliant send-off. All these guys have basically chosen to finish their careers in India because of the high visibility. Every ground they go to, there'll be a huge felicitation. There'll be silver salvas and diamond salvas and what have you. And you can say bye-bye. Now, that privilege may be accorded to him if he wants it. I hope that Dhoni is more of a maverick and says, I don't need all of that. For heaven's sake, I have enough. And, if you have good enough alternatives, I'm happy to sit. But talk to him. I mean, people shouldn't listen or get news from the newspapers or elsewhere now from, the digital media saying, oh, Dhoni no longer selected. You have to talk to him, give him, because of his stature, I suppose, being one of the biggest iconic cricketers in the world, allow him to say, no mas, that's it, I'm finished.
Yes, talk to him for sure. And I think that's exactly what Saurav Ganguly also said, that I will talk to him because at this point I may not be aware of what's gone on. So I will have to speak to him about it. Bharat wanted to make a point. Go ahead, please.
No, I actually was checking the schedule for India during their home summer or home winter and to see whether they're playing a T20 or a one-day at Ranchi. Unfortunately, they're not. They're only playing this test match and Dhoni might show up in the stands. You never know. But so there can be no farewell at his home ground anyway. That's ruled out. So not this winter. But I actually was thinking, Tanvi, during the World Cup that with the IPL and the next T20 World Cup so close to each other next year.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one thing. That's the only thought. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's the only thought I can foresee going on in his head because he had a good IPL last year. So if he has a good IPL, maybe he opens the doors for that T20 World Cup, and just playing T20 internationals allows him to do everything else. This I'm just totally saying from what I think he might be thinking.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you what you think he might be thinking, because everybody is wondering why hasn't he taken a decision or communicated his decision so far. So maybe what you're saying, Alan, do you agree? Maybe he has his eyes on that T20 World Cup?
Absolutely. I mean, he's absolutely right what Bharat says, because I believe strongly that, you know, as a cricketer, I'm talking as a cricketer here, that this guy has still got something to offer Indian cricket. Now, people might laugh at me and say, no, he's past the sell-by date. I don't think so, because as a keeper in the shorter format, you've got to watch. He's actually brilliant. We are talking about Rishabh Pant. Is mind-boggling. Rishabh Pant is absolutely mind-boggling as a batsman. But as a keeper, I don't want to, you know, even compare him to Dhoni, because it's chalk and cheese. So as far as Dhoni is concerned, is incredible in the shorter format of the game. And we are actually sitting here and judging this guy's fitness. This guy's a super fit guy. And because the entire thing, we talk about the finisher and we talk about him being a brilliant, how he used to win games. He's not able to do that today like he used to do in the past. But that doesn't mean that he's not still good enough, because who's better than him in one-day cricket? Saha is outstanding in Test cricket, but he's not playing one-day cricket. Sanju Samson is brilliant, but he hasn't proved. He's going to be playing this, hopefully, this one-day series. Rishabh Pant, we've seen, is really not good enough at the moment in wicket-keeping. So Dhoni, if he has a brilliant, because I think he'll have an outstanding IPL. And when he has an outstanding IPL, that's the time you got to figure out whether you want him or not. So till the IPL is over, I don't think this Indian selection, nobody should take a decision and make him retire right now, because I don't think personally he wants to retire. So I just feel that wait for the IPL, look at his form, then it makes it easy, because there's no cricket after that. You can say, okay, please retire, or whatever you want to say.
Well, I mean, if Rishabh Pant or Saha are listening to this, they're not going to be very happy, Mr. Kishore Bhimani, with this proposal that let's wait it out and see what Dhoni does for CSK before we can decide on what he can do for India.
You see, I, as a journalist of 43 years of the game of cricket, I have no reason to stop my own flow of rhetoric. I believe that today the decision lies with the selectors and with the general cricketing public. And today the fact that he may feel hurt if he's not done this, and we must give another chance to these two little boys there. I mean, after all, Dhoni must be given a chance because he's done so well for Indian cricket. Absolute rubbish. I believe that he should be judged today, 38 years going on 39. Today he is showing, today senior cricketers I've talked to in this business have said that no, he's past his use-by date. No, he's not got the same reflexes. No, he is not the same finisher. And yet, what is this I hear from our own panel? That who are we to pass judgment on him? We are everything to pass judgment on him. We are cricket lovers. Here you say that the whole world loves Dhoni, and then you say we have nothing to say in the matter. I think this is really going past the point. The real thing is that people like us who have seen cricket, I mean, today you take a man like Charu Sharma, who's been all over the world. He's done commentary. He's done. I mean, there are people, so many people who have followed cricket. You look at Ridhiman today. Ridhiman has not had a chance in white ball cricket. If he has not got a chance in white ball cricket, it doesn't mean he's a great keeper. A great keeper in test match can't be a great keeper in white ball cricket. What rubbish. He is a good, and he is a great batsman also. It does not have to be a finisher like Dhoni. And we have not seen Dhoni finish a few games, certainly not in the World Cup.
Okay, point well taken. Let's also listen into what people have to say. Neil Khandelwal calling us from Mumbai. Hi, Neil. Go ahead, please.
Hi. No, I'm listening to the panel. I was saying that Dhoni's retirement and everything. Need to ask, what about Tendulkar's retirement? How was that planned? Because I vividly remember he had not scored a century in the last 20 test matches, 180 test match to 200 test match which he played. No century at all. And tell me any other player who would have been able to play test cricket without scoring a century for that long a period. One of your panels were also saying that he's not playing a match at Ranchi. Now, BCCI should organize a match for him also at Ranchi when we could have called the West Indies team for the 199th and 200 test match. Why can't this be done for a captain who has won us World Cup, T20 World Cup, One Day World Cup? Is Dhoni a lesser player than Tendulkar? And he was said that he picks and chooses. Tendulkar picked and chose. he did not go to West Indies immediately after the IPL. I want the panelists to answer on this. Please
Okay.
give an answer.
Okay.
Any one of them.
All right.
All
So,
these 3 points.
okay, who wants to take that question?
No, I just want to say, I mean, the question from a viewer tells you how strong the cricketing acumen of Indians is. I mean,
Correct.
you know, these are not questions that you would expect on any other subject, so with such detail. So that's the part of the problem of being in India.
Absolutely. And can I just come back to one
Yes,
point?
yes.
You see, I just want to, this is to Mr. Bhimani, because I think every time we sit, he has a feeling that I'm against people. Mr. Bhimani, I have full respect for you. I have absolutely nothing, and you have every right to air your views, and I'm not saying that, you know, you're not entitled to do that. What I'm trying to say about Dhoni, and I feel where he is wrong today, the only thing what I believe that Dhoni is wrong is that he's absconding. When I say absconding in the right manner, where he's actually not taking a decision. He needs to take a decision, and because he's staying away from the field, I feel this is a wrong move. But as far as cricketing is concerned, I still think, and this is my belief, and you are entitled to yours, Mr. Bhimani, I believe that MS Dhoni has what it takes to keep wickets for India in the one-day game. I'm not talking about test. I don't think the others, except for Saha, I don't think the others are as good as MS Dhoni. I'm saying as good as MS Dhoni in the one-day game. It's nothing to do with personal issues here. It's about how good, as a cricketer, I'm seeing MS Dhoni. If I was on the selection panel, I'm not, but if I was on the selection panel, I would never drop this guy because I would wait for him to take that decision. And that's what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Bhimani.
Okay, can I answer that? Can I answer that? Why don't we have him play till he's 60? You see, this is what happens to Indian cricket. People turn around and say, no, you cannot drop Tendulkar. No, you cannot drop Ganguly. No, you cannot drop Gavaskar. Today, this is what has happened time and time again. We have to look at what other countries' cricketers do. And I think I'm quite an admirer of Cricket Australia. What did they do with Michael Bevan? Michael Bevan was scoring runs, and they felt, people like David Boone and senior players felt, he was not consistent anymore. He did not have the same force in him, the same essence of cricket, and they dropped Michael Bevan. You have dropped people, they have dropped people, many, as somebody just said on our panel, like Border. Border said, it's over, I'm leaving. Today, this is important. And whether he says or not, today, why are we worried about retirement? We should worry about whether he should be selected
Correct.
or whether he should not be selected. It is your opinion versus mine that he's still good enough. The way he couldn't finish in the World Cup, I felt embarrassed. This was the same guy. It was like seeing Arjun at the end of Mahabharata not able to lift his Gandiv. And you feel embarrassed that this is the great world conqueror can't do it. Today, Dhoni was the greatest batsman in the world, the greatest finisher in the world, and he could not win us a game in the World Cup.
Okay, I want to take one more viewer before I go back, go to Charu and then to Bharat. Sridhar is on the phone line from Bengaluru. Sridhar, good evening.
Good evening.
Go ahead, please. What would you like to say?
Yeah, very much. I'm a fan of Dhoni. I've been listening to the entire conversation. I'm pretty happy the way it is going. But my point of view is very simple. Dhoni's ideology has been very clear when he took over as captain that seniors should not play one-day cricket. That was his very clear expression because we see it is meant one-day cricket, etc., is meant for people with fast legs, everything. I'm a big fan of him. But unfortunately, for last couple of years, say 2 years back, I am very sure I am missing out on his this one purely because he is not truly keeping up his own approach, what he started, because I really felt that particular expression. Because when Sehwag was playing very well, he was dropped. And it is a very clear, open fact, because it is a question of what? I always remember that particular fact. So I am with a clear expression that he has already done enough to Indian cricket. I'm sure he can sit back and then, of course, say, groom youngsters. He can give, say, freshers. But it is time that, okay, he retires and relax and then go about it.
Okay, point
but
very, very well made.
50 years of IPL.
Right,
Sridhar,
sure. I completely take your point. In fact, that's exactly what, I was also referring to, Vinay, that there are fans out there who now do believe that it's perhaps time for him to move on. Obviously, it's not none of our calls. The call is with the selectors. But Charu, let me come to you on that aspect. Dhoni as the wicketkeeper, Dhoni as the batsman, and Dhoni as a strategist. If you keep all of this together, does the Indian team need him today?
Oh, gosh. Well, it's not for me to decide, luckily, but I think no. because they've got enough people, they're doing well enough internationally. They're doing well enough internationally. Now, let me just take a quick little macro view here. You know, I completely agree with many, including Kishore, who was saying that I'm also a big admirer of the Australian school, where they say, okay, done, next. And that's how it should be. But, you know, we are very different socio-culturally. And in India, well, in Australia, nobody builds temples or churches to cricketers, do they? But here we do. So we treat our very few sporting heroes very differently from nations that have many sporting heroes. And therefore, this situation is, well, a little more complicated than it should be. Let's just take a quick 30-seconder into what Dhoni's mind would be saying. I'm thinking on his behalf. Most importantly, do I need cricket still? Simple answer, no. Does cricket need me? If he should decide no, then he should step away. Also, of course, some other considerations. We talked about the T20 in 2020. Now, that's a long way off. Already, the iconic images of Dhoni are beginning to fade. You know, the winner of the 2011 World Cup, the Big Six to finish, 2007, that's a long way out. A lot of the youngsters particularly may now remember, oh, he couldn't score enough and he couldn't score quickly enough and he lost us the World Cup in a sense, which is very unfair, of course, because he's not the only one as a batsman. But the memories of his heroics are beginning to fade. And that should be a huge pointer to Dhoni to not wait till 2020. If things go well for him and India does very well at the World Cup or wins it, terrific. What if India doesn't? And what if he, typically, as was in the one-day World Cup, is, well, painted as a bit of a villain because he couldn't get it going quickly enough? Because you can't guarantee that, can you? I mean, you get out, you try and go for a six, you get out too. So, you know, he really has to weigh that because his iconic status, his status as one of the biggest sporting heroes of India, now is already beginning to come under question here on our panel and, of course, throughout the country as well. That's a big pointer for me, for Dhoni to sort of sit back and say, listen, do I really need to go back into that? Do I really need another zero here or a slow innings there? I don't need it. I've done enough. I've got enough. Indian cricket's, you know, very robust. It's got many other people. So time for me to step back. What's he waiting for? I'm really not too sure at all. Maybe that one match, one send-off, which is also something Dhoni doesn't need. Maybe the nation and our sentimentality needs it, not him.
Yeah, I would, you know, assume he's not that person. But this statement that you made, Charu, memories of heroics are beginning to fade. I must admit, it does even hurt to even listen to that kind of a statement when it comes to Dhoni. But I get what you're saying, and you know, it may just be true. So, Bharat, is Dhoni, in your mind, that kind of a person who may factor this in, that people will begin to forget what he did if he continues to play like that? Or is he thinking, I know I can come back and I know I can deliver one more time, and that's what I want to do, that one more T20 Cup that I want?
See, Tanvi, having done a lot of research on the Dhoni brain, I'm no expert, but I can tell you he's not the sorts who really too much about like whether, like, you know, what people are going to say about him. Like, I was unfortunately in that MCG press box when the press release came and like it said that he suddenly retired from Test cricket. And it broke my heart because it meant that it ruined my New Year's Eve in Australia that time around. The thing is, like, one thing we are really forgetting is we are presently in an era of Indian cricket where the team management, which is Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri, have had a bigger say on issues than the selectors or even the erstwhile, like, you know, BCCI. So those are people who, and Dhoni has played such an integral role as a captain on the field for Virat Kohli, that maybe it'll come down to Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri, what plans they have for him. Because obviously they will definitely be in touch with each other. So while we're talking about selectors and what Ganguly is going to do and all that, Shastri and Kohli play a big role in Dhoni's future. And also, when we, to Charu, like, to talk about like his, like, of course, he's not the same man he was a few years ago. But it's a little unfair to talk about him being responsible for India not winning that World Cup semi-final. I was there, and from my vantage point, what I could see was the reason India got even close was purely because of Dhoni. And if in hindsight, there was a blunder sending him at number 6 or 7, wherever he came in. And I don't think it was his fault, really, that India lost that game.
Okay, I know that's like literally going down the rabbit hole if we start discussing that match and that day, and we will all have a lot to say about it. So I'm going to take a step back and maybe just go across to some of our viewers. And Narsimhan is on the phone line calling us from Navi Mumbai. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Evening. I have been listening to this debate. My take is that end of the day, it is the entertainment that matters. irrespective of the age, the Indian public is looking for entertainment. Even today, Amitabh Bachchan at this age is able to entertain people. And you can look at others as well. Shah Rukh Khan is over 50 and still people are looking at entertainment. So if somebody is able to entertain the Indian public, and the way Dhoni has gone about it, winning matches which are impossible for India, and the heroics that he has shown, and still is able to show that magic in the field. Indian public today is looking for that kind of entertainment. So the proof of the pudding is in its eating. So at the end of the day, entertainment matters irrespective of his age or the technique. We have had some of the best people playing cricket and the techniques that they had been using.
Right.
But then it is the entertainment that Dhoni has provided is what the Indian public remembers, and they want him to still continue and show that magic in the field.
All right, point well made. Thank you so much for calling. Naveen is on the phone line from Chennai. Good evening, Naveen. What's your view?
Good evening, everyone, and this is a very good debate. All I would like to say is Dhoni is a legend in his own right, and if you look at Virat Kohli, even today he depends on Dhoni for a DRS review. Such is the value addition of Dhoni. In terms of retirement, if you look at it, life has come full 360 degrees for Dhoni. He was picked by Saurav Ganguly when the selectors were against Dhoni's selection and they wanted Dinesh Karthik to be in the team, but Ganguly picked Dhoni. So it's time that Ganguly has a word with Dhoni and asks him for his future plan and fixes a date for his retirement. Yes, he's a legend. He couldn't win the World Cup match, but if sir, I would also like to ask you, there were 10 other players who couldn't win us the match. So we can't pinpoint Dhoni for not winning us the match. It's unfortunate that it happened. Had he won the match, he would have won the World Cup.
Right.
It was the same case for him.
Naveen, let me also very quickly ask you, do you still want Dhoni to play for CSK?
Definitely, for the next 2 years, definitely. And for Team India also, I want him to take up a mentoring role or a coach role where he supports the youngsters and guides the youngsters. If you look at Rishabh Pant, Riddhiman Saha, they need his value addition, that coach tips for him to put the team cricket for. So Dhoni's value addition is there.
Yeah.
We should stop looking at him as a cricketer and start looking at taking his values as a valuable cricketer and ex-cricketer. We should keep him in the system, like how we have kept Dravid, and he has done a lot to us. So we should use him.
Okay, all right. I take your point. Thank you so much for calling. So 2 more views they're coming in, and I must say very interesting points being raised by our viewers as well, Vinay. The question that was put to Charu, I want to take that to you as well. Overall, if you see the picture and the contribution of Dhoni, does Team India need him? Let's not talk about whether he should take the decision of retiring or not, but Ganguly and Ravi Shastri, and if we have a new team of selectors or current selectors, what should they be doing?
I think Charu made that point, or somebody else made that point about Virat and Ravi Shastri being a very important factor in taking a decision on this. I think that's very critical. It's a very strong team management we have currently, one of the strongest we've had in a long, long time.
Yes.
And I think they'll play a critical role for sure. But look, I think for me, the most delightful part of this whole discussion is the kind of questions that people are asking.
Correct.
Because that tells you the kind of scenario or the country that we live in. It's extremely important to get that. Remember one other thing. The building of the Dhoni persona happened in a modern day technology era. Today, the legend of Dhoni is not just built around how he plays on the field. You see social media is flooded with snatches of stump mic conversations where he's giving tips to the bowlers.
Yes.
This was not something that perhaps a couple they benefited from. Maybe he gave advice, nobody knows about it. But Dhoni's legend and his aura got built because of that. And people have done timelines of such advice being given from behind the stumps. You have an Instagram which is flooded with his personal life. You have a lot of surround sound that
entertainment,
exists.
like
one of the viewers said as well,
yes.
right? Also, the arrival of IPL has meant that the entertainment quotient or the utility has gone up even further. You now have official fan clubs where people are actually paying for it. Just this IPL, I was at Wankhede Stadium to watch one of the opening games, which was with CSK, with Mumbai Indians. And imagine in Mumbai, playing a home game, the crowds are rooting for him.
Right.
That's not something that you would expect maybe 20 years ago. So a lot has changed. And I think that's one of the big reasons why utility for cricketer is key. but also the persona and the entertainment and the whole surround sound that he brings around the game. I mean, he guarantees a full house today, no matter where he is. 20,000 people turn up to see him practice at a net. That's not the kind of thing you would see for many cricketers.
Alan, would you want to pitch in on that aspect?
Well, I just want to go back to that point, but both of them have talked about Vinay, and I think it was Bharat who mentioned that about, Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli, because I think, these guys have been instrumental in having Dhoni in the side. There's no question about it. And it's absolutely wrong for anyone to suggest that Dhoni lost the World Cup, because there's no way he lost it. He actually got us so close. But I'm not going down that route. I'm just saying that I know firsthand that Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli actually believe that Dhoni gives a lot of value addition to the team, not just as a cricketer, on the field, off the field as well. And that's why they have him there. Now, I think, like Charu rightly mentioned, the memories are fading. You are beginning to feel that, perhaps we have to move on. And I'm sure Mr. Ravi Shastri and Virat Kohli may be having that same kind of feeling, now after what's happened after the World Cup. So that could be there. It was a wonderful statement made by Charu on that. But I still feel that if once he plays the IPL, I just believe that this man has special talents. If he plays the IPL, I think he's super fit and he can play for India. But the thing that I don't like, and I'm just repeating because I'm a huge fan of Dhoni, as you can tell on this panel, I just feel that the way he has abstained from cricket for about, 1 or 2 months, that is not right. So he has to come out, perhaps Ganguly, perhaps the selectors can talk to him and ask him to take that decision. And that is my biggest problem with what's happening with Dhoni so far.
Okay, so that's an interesting point that you've raised there, but and I keep coming back to this point, and Mr. Kishore Bhimani, I'm going to take it to you also. Vinay raised an interesting aspect that we all now know about how when he's even behind the stumps, he's constantly, giving guidance, constantly giving instructions, leading the team in a certain way, telling the bowler what to do. We get those, snippets of those via these stump audios that come online. Then, what about that role that Dhoni plays in the team? Are we ready to do away with that role of his?
Tanvi, let me answer that very candidly. Today there was a man called Mike Brearley. I hope people still remember him. He was the only English captain that I know over the last half a century who was captain of the team and who played test cricket only because of his role as a captain. He didn't belong in that team. I can think of 3 batsmen at that time in England who were better than Brearley. Yes, you do make that. You do need a motivator in the team. You do need a planner. You do need a playmaker. Agreed. But let us not say that we are going to do without Riddhi, without Ridhiman Saha, or without Rishabh Pant, or Sanju Samson, or whoever, because he's done so much value added outside. I'm sorry, but the cricket, as I understand it in a very humble way, is not about keeping people in for their bits and pieces contributions. It's about you must be the best. International cricket today means you must have specialists. Today, there is Riddhi is a specialist in keeping with his gloves. Today, Rishabh is not. But Rishabh, hoping that his gloves will improve, he's a great batsman. He is the batsman who's going to be talked about in the next 5 or 10 years. So let's not just say, no, we must ask him. Somebody must talk to him. His feelings must not be hurt. I find myself a little out of kilter with this kind of argument.
Okay, I do take your point there, and I agree actually on the emotional part, and I don't even think we should paint MS Dhoni with those colors, because I don't think he takes it like that. Maybe he's continued, like Bharat was saying, for reasons that he believes he still has more cricket in him. I don't want to believe it's because he thinks all of this fame and all of those sponsor money is very, very important. But Venkat on the phone line from Bengaluru, good evening. Go ahead, please.
And, good evening to all the panelists. I think Mr. Kishore Bhimani is against 4:1 right now. Okay, that doesn't matter. I support him. Dhoni is all-time great for all of us, no doubt about it. But he should have retired 2 years ago. And I was really sorry to see Sachin Tendulkar playing 23 test matches. The last 4 series were just, he was carried on to have 200 tests. Number one. Number two, I'll ask you, Tanvi, just one question. Would you ask Lester Piggott to retire? Will you ask Aslam Khader to retire? Will you ask Vasant Shinde to retire? Will you ask Pesi Shroff to retire? No. They are all legends in their own. And as one of the panelists rightly said, it is for Mr. Ravi Shastri and Mr. Virat Kohli to consult Dhoni, and hopefully they give him a nice send-off during this Bangladesh series and say, yes, boss, please. And thank you. Good evening to all of you. And I'm missing Fred D'Souza, number one. Number two is, first time I'm listening, these panelists not talking over each other. It's really, really rare to see such a debate.
Yes, and
Thank
on
you.
such a passionate topic, Mr. Venkatraman, on Dhoni, and we are not yelling. That's how debates are conducted on Mirror Now. Thank you so much for calling. Sanju's on the phone line from Mumbai. Go ahead, please.
I
That's
just want
because
to
of
say
Tanvi.
in 2007 and 8. Hello?
Yes, yes, go ahead, please.
In 2007 and 8, Dhoni threw away all the great players at the pretext of fresh legs. I hope I'm audible. Am I audible?
Absolutely, continue.
Just trying to repeat, Dhoni threw away in 2007 and 8 all these great players who had about 2 years of play left in them. Whereas in case of Dhoni, Dhoni has stopped performing almost 2 years ago. Why can't he go away without being kicked out by Ganguly or anybody? Because he has done great injustice to good set of players. It is not a matter of laughing. Because I saw Virender Sehwag, he was thrown out because of ego hassle.
Yes.
Not because of lack of performance, which is incorrect. Why can't he be sent out just exactly the way he has thrown away Virender Sehwag or Ganguly or Lakshman?
Well,
he outlived his utility as a player about 2 years ago. He is no more good enough to be there in team of any format. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, cricket fans, don't forget, they remember each and every single detail and controversy.
All I can tell Sanju is the wheel has actually turned full circle. Because
Correct,
it was Ganguly
exactly.
who was in the other end of the divide now. And now he's the one who's going to be deciding that.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have all of you gentlemen on this panel for this conversation. Of course, none of us get to decide, nor do the cricket fans. The decision is in the hands of the selectors, perhaps with a view from the coach and the captain on what needs to be done next. But I believe the general consensus is that we also need a decision on this. Perhaps we need to hear from MS Dhoni on what he's thinking and what he's planning to do. So thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. Let me quickly tell you before we slip into a debate what's also lined up for 9 p.m. It's a big story, and a story that we've been bringing you the details of from Kerala. A deadly serial killer case. It's now unfolding in a way that it sounds deadlier than what Charles Sobraj did in his era. We bring to you the strange life of Cyanide Chechi and the other big conversation. We continue tracking the economy. Abysmal report about sales and demand from rural India. What does it mean? We decode that for you. Stay with us.